I'm super excited to have this chat with you today because the first part is you were day one staff of the company. So in the early days of startups, there are two broad things that come to mind. The first is the product you want to build. The second will be the market you want to take it to. 2016, when you guys were thinking of dLocal, what were the things that you have seen from those early days in terms of the strategy for the product and also the market you went into? What shaped your mindset?
Sure, thank you. And again, hi everybody, thank you. It's a pleasure to have you here. So very early days, and while we were building the company, the product, our geographical footprint, learning from customers as well, which has been an essence as a company since day one, there were three big lessons at the time. First, it was about having the local people in the ground, the importance of having people in each of the emerging markets we were operating. It's important to have people, it was important to have people in Brazil at the time explaining how boleto works, or how online transfers or debit cards in Brazil works. It's exactly the same important to understand how M-Pesa works in Kenya, or FOR in Egypt, or UPI in India. And all those local know-how, you only get it when you have local people in the ground. So for us, that has been key as a company since day one. Second thing, it's defining a framework and a playbook in terms of how to expand. Being a global company, while you expand more and more, you manage to learn a lot of what works and what does not work. And we took a lot of those lessons, we defining all of that into our framework, and defining a playbook on what to execute when coming to a new country. And the third one, and I think Seba touched a lot, Maria touched now, it's about the platform. When you want to serve merchants under a single API, and you go to so many countries which have many different behaviors, it's super important to have a flexible platform. And the reason why is because you want to keep adding new services to that product, to that platform, and you don't want the merchant to continue making new integrations. So under that single API, we understand the importance of having a flexible platform to be able to serve, to have boleto, but at the same time to process cards and to keep adding UPI, and then M-Pesa, which works totally different. And 3 months ago, a new payment system came in South Africa, which is PayShap, which is the UPI version for South Africa, and NIPS in Nigeria, and so on and so forth. So the importance of having a flexible platform, it makes the whole difference to continue growing the product and add new geographies and add new options for our merchants.
Interesting.
How is it?
I think coming from Africa, a Nigerian who, I think there are three things that we had that always made things difficult, just speaking for Africa. The infrastructure. The infrastructure is very inadequate. The second part is also reliability of systems. The third part is the international standard that most of the global brands will expect. You don't have those behind-the-scenes sales support. And so when you put these three things together, shortage of infrastructure, the standard for reliability, and also after-sales support, which is typically what you call customer success. I see those things where the things that are super lacking in the continent, and I think dLocal is done well in that area. The second thing I wanted to find out, like everyone here, dLocal started out from Uruguay. The founders are from Latin America. Most of the senior leadership team from Latin America. And we've seen companies that start up from Latin America tend to expand regionally. So that means from Brazil, you expect to go to Mexico, Paraguay, and all of this stuff. dLocal took a bold step to expand globally, to leave Latin America, to go to Asia, to come to Africa. What gave you guys the impetus to do that in the early days?
Good. So Maria has presented the evolution in our geographical footprint. We started in Brazil first, then we got to the rest of Latin America between 2017 and 2018. Merchants were, to be honest. I remember back early in the days, being in Palo Alto at Facebook offices, which was a customer at the time, and they asked us our ability to solve for them 13 countries in Africa, same way we were doing for them in Latin America. For me personally, was the first time I was hearing about payments processing in Africa, to be honest. They asked about Egypt, Morocco, Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, Ghana, and the list continues. Very close in time happened the same with Booking.com for Morocco. They were having challenges to collect their fees from the hotels in Morocco. For those which are familiar with Morocco, dealing with what's called the ODC, which is the exchange office, it's super complex. So they didn't have a local presence to handle all of that complexity. And also Netflix came and asked us for Nigeria, which Verve has close to 40% of market adoption. For those which don't know Verve, it's a local scheme which can only be processed locally. So if you want to offer and accept payments through Verve, you need to have local presence, and Netflix was not being able to capture all their consumers, which were Verve card holders. So those were the three first times where we started hearing about outside Latin America, and we said let's try it, let's give it a try, let's understand, let's learn more, and that's how we went first to Morocco 2018, then 2019 Nigeria, and then when we put our feet on the ground, we started realizing how complex those geographies were, and we decided to continue expanding and exploring more and more in Africa, in Asia, very similar happened in Asia, 2018, India. That's how we got to be outside of Latin America.
If I hear you clearly, you are saying the expansion into the rest part of the world was not its enough show?
Totally not.
Wow.
Totally not. It was, again, merchant-oriented. We had nothing at the time but merchants trusting on our solution and seeing our ability to execute and to solve complex problems in emerging markets. I think, as Seba said when he spoke about our culture, it's our ability to execute, the speed, understanding merchant needs. So it's not a show at all. We were 3 years ago in 28 countries. We are as of today in 40 countries. Close to 28% of our revenues are Africa and Asia. So for us, it's a reality. We are solving a real problem for our merchants in those geographies.
As the co-president and also the chief operating officer, dLocal operates in 40 plus markets and about 15 time zones. So that means you have people scattered across different parts of the world. Operationally managing these markets and also managing the people, what were the key strategies that?
Can we answer that together? We will answer together, but feel free to complement. I would like to answer your views. Okay. I think it's about the culture. It's about having a very strong identity and culture as a company, which blends, again, it's a culture which blends corporate culture plus local flavors. It's important to understand what we want as a single company, what's define us, and again, Seba touched on a few bullet points of our culture, making sure we spread that all around each of the places we have people, and then we also manage to combine that with the local flavors to understand how it's Nigeria, how it's South Africa, how it's China, how it's India. For example, a few things we did a lot. We empower people to move to other offices, to spread that culture around. We had people coming from Uruguay to China for 4 years. We had people which moved from Uruguay to South Africa for already 2 years. We have people which spend time in Nigeria. Myself, I went to Africa, so that's the way we managed to handle a global company, having people in 15 time zones over 40 countries. And again, it's also our people making that incremental and spreading that. How do you see? Yeah, how do you see it being?
Yeah, I think I'll be one of the biggest beneficiaries to that. So you talked about the first part, which is the strong execution mindset that comes from the center, because you've done it extensively, maybe in Brazil and some of these other markets. Taking advantage of also the local knowledge, domain knowledge in the region, quite super helpful. For everyone seated here today, sometimes we think, I can imagine we've heard so much about M-Pesa from Kenya, and Nigeria has lots of payment methods. Now Ghana is very close to Nigeria, just like an hour flight. And the expectation is, if East Africa is for mobile money, somebody will be thinking Ghana is almost similar to Nigeria in terms of the payment methods. And so a Ghanaian looks like Moses, almost speak like Moses. But in terms of payment methods, they are totally different. Ghana is a big mobile money country. So you just find out that those kind of nuances, the idiosyncrasies of each of those markets, and aligning that with the strong execution mindset coming from the center, it truly helps us. Yeah.
And I think the fact that we have managed to share a lot of time together also was key for us to understand how each of the market works. I remember all the offsites. We went in Kenya, in Nigeria, the local houses, which is a plan we with our people to get along together in South Africa. Yeah. Some memories at the time in Kenya. We were with which is sitting there, and he will be presenting about product. We're going for a hiking in Kenya. Suddenly the bus got a puncture in the wheel in the middle of the road. So we all need to leave the bus. People came to change the wheel, and we were in the middle of nowhere, kind of countryside. So some artisans which were living in the countryside came with their handicrafts, trying to sell us some local things. Our honest question was,
how do I pay?
Honestly, how do I pay? I didn't have any cash. I only had card at the time. I think it was the same case for all of the team. And they got a phone, which was not even a smartphone, phone, a feature phone. I said, you can pay me through mobile money. I give you my mobile number, my phone number. You make me an M-Pesa. At the time, I had an Airtel phone. And I said, but I have Airtel. No worries, it's interoperable. You can send me money through the phone. So that's where we pay. I end up paying with mobile money in Kenya. And I realized how important it was to be really local. I think was one of the first times when I realized the importance of, in Kenya particularly, offering mobile money. So all those experiences and having the local people, right, saying, no, forget about cards. Like, you will not pay with cards here. Like, you need to have more money. Has been key.
Thanks. I think this is quite insightful. Seba talked about you spending time in Africa. You were in Africa for 6 months, 6 solid months, and haven't done it from Uruguay like you've done it from the center. What were the things you learned? What were the things you saw when you had to stay in Africa?
Everything. You want to go through it? But we'll say again, we started expanding and giving our first steps in Africa in 2018. The theory is completely different than the reality, to be honest. One thing is how do you think a market works? Another thing is how you see the market works. So my first time in Africa was early 2022. After COVID, I wanted to do it. I wanted to make it in 2021. I couldn't because there was a second wave of COVID in Africa, so I went fly there. So as soon as I could, I went to Nigeria and South Africa first to meet the markets. I remember that I was at the flight, flying back, and I started typing things I learned. And not only things I learned, similarities I was seeing between some countries in Africa and a few things we saw before in Latin America. Nigeria penetration, same as Brazil, or South Africa regulation and licenses, very similar to Brazil, affects capital restrictions, and so on and so forth. So it was again, the ability to learn about M-Pesa, the ability to learn about Intl, the ability to understand foreign Egypt or NIFs in Nigeria, or credit cards, or 3DS, or Tanzania, mobile money as well, or Ghana, highly penetrated on mobile money, super important. But more than that also was the ability to build a team. At the time we were 5 people. I think we are as of today over 50 people in the ground, local people. We managed to build a strong presence. Also the opportunity to meet with regulators, super important. We have as of today, for example, a PSSP license in Nigeria, a PSP license in Kenya. We got the license in Rwanda a month ago, a system operator license approval in South Africa, and many more. So having the chance to meet the regulator, explain our business, explain what we were doing, what we were bringing to the continent was super important. And then meeting with customers. For the first time in years, we managed to capture customers in Africa. It was not only bringing international companies to come to Africa. It also was the ability to get African companies to go to other countries as well, or go within Africa, which is huge. So we said those were key things.
Yeah, okay. I think I also benefited from one of those sessions when we did a commercial strategy for the teams from Africa. We got them, everyone, into Nigeria. And there were key things we learned. One of the first things, besides the DNA stuff Seba talked about, how the things are possible when you went to meet with the central bank governor in Nigeria. It just tells you that a fintech can go to meet with the regulators and just provide insights to them. The second part is commercialization. Again, that is one of the things you talked about, how we're now able to get local merchants to grow outside of just Nigeria. So it helps the team on the ground just to understand how to commercialize things we do, especially when things are very complex. So yeah, I think that's...
And 2 more things to add. It was also a demonstration. It was also a demonstration, and Seba touched on that before demonstrating that what we want to do is we need to be the first ones in the line in order to make that happen. And need to be honest as well, I have some fun also.
Yeah, because it brought some level of believability. That is not just a Latin American company. So that you stayed in the region means that you are truly going to be Africa. So, and we saw the kind of people that wanted to join dLocal from there. Like we grew astronomically in terms of even human resources. So that's true. Yeah, thanks. I wanted to, we hear cross-border, we hear local to local play. And so, again, just break it to us. What drives the cross-border? Like, why do you have to do local to local cross-border? Like, are they the same thing in each market?
I think it's about it's an option we give to a merchant. It's more about a merchant decision. Yeah. Again, we understand we're solving same level of complexity, either local to local or cross-border. The platform is the same. Payment methods are the same. Most of the licenses are the same. Integration is the same. So for us, the difference between local to local and cross-border, it's more about where the merchant want to get settled. If they have a local entity and they want to get settled domestically, or they don't have local presence and they want to get settled abroad, it's one more building block. It's one more level of complexity we're solving for our merchants when we are selling them cross-border. But at the end of the day, we're agnostic because we see merchants as global, so we are not going after the merchants which want to do one payment method just in one country. We're seeing ourselves as an enabler for merchants to get access to more and more local payment methods. And sometimes they might want to get settled in Brazil locally, for example, or in Nigeria locally, or in Kenya locally, but in South Africa cross-border, or in Indonesia cross-border, or in India cross-border. So it's one more flavor we give to our merchants, but we're agnostic. We're solving the same level of complexity.
Nice.
Well, we're running out of time. Just one for you. What do you see next for Nigeria, being Nigerian? And what would you attribute dLocal success in Nigeria, if I may?
Nigeria, like maybe someday everyone will dress like this.
I can't mind, eh?
Yeah.
I didn't bring it, but I can't mind.
I think the fundamentals around the country will continue to be very strong and the same. So we've had 250 million people in the country. I think it's not just the data of 250 million, it's the what makes up that. 18% of 18%, I mean the chunk of Nigerians will average of 18 years. So it just tells you these people are youthful. These people are the digital natives of today. These are the people that will buy things online. These are the people that will do e-commerce. And so that is something that is very valuable. The third thing will be Nigerians love to travel and stay in diaspora. So that means you see lots of people leave and earn from other parts of the world and send monies back home. So in sending monies back home, their loved ones can continue to spend like every other person. So that's super important. But I think the finest thing is that solving those complexities we talked about in the early days. And so as we solve those complexities, more and more people not afraid to pay with Netflix, not afraid to play with Spotify. And as we solve those, more people will come into the space to play. And Nigeria will continue to grow. Above all, internet penetration is to grow. When you compare Nigeria to Brazil, we've not gone anywhere. So as more people get into the safety net, we see more that we can hit from them.
And if I can add to that, I remember at the time when we launched in Brazil, credit cards, if you want to make an international payment using a credit card in Brazil was mostly impossible or very difficult. Nigeria, it's having very similar trends today. all banks are asking merchants to come local and processing nairas and not longer US dollars. And we are seeing more and more of that coming as well. So good. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Please let me give him a round of applause. Thank you, Aku.
We'll leave the stage to Gabi, who is our general counsel. She will touch on compliance, regulations, and legal. Gabi, all yours.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Very glad to be here. My name is Gabriela Vieira. As Jaco said, I'm General Counsel at dLocal. I have a master and a PhD in international law, and I'm extremely passionate about what I'm talking to you here today. I want to talk to you about how we navigate global regulatory complexity for our clients, and more specifically, how we actually deploy local expertise, how we build and how we continue to use the toolbox to apply for licenses in each country, and also how we became to be local experts for our clients as well. So you heard this before, you saw this slide before. dLocal makes the complex simple. And it's important to say that when we talk about FX, regulation, and compliance, this is an incredibly complex environment that we're talking about. We're talking about different currencies, different regulatory frameworks, different reporting obligations, different taxes, different customs, so many different types of law and regulations. When we go to developed markets, such as the US, or even the European Union, there are certain principles or directives that allow the laws to be harmonized and to leverage certain experience in one country to another in a more easy and seamless way. That is not happening in emerging markets. Those are very, very distinct realities that we are facing. So that being said, emerging markets, they are diverse and complex, and the regulations, they are diverse and complex as well. We know that each authority are trying to address the risks of their countries, and they're doing so in also in their best abilities. And we need to understand what are those risks they're trying to address so we can keep on the top of that curve as well, not only while we enter, but while we stay and progress and advance in the country. So again, the regulation in emerging markets, they are ever changing. They're always evolving. There is a lot of those countries that are still addressing the digital commerce. So they are realizing certain gaps in regulations or certain parts that they could improve. So this means a very, very dynamic regulation. And this means that our job doesn't stop when we enter the country. It continues day to day in each of those countries. And how we do that, we are local. You heard us already today, but we have people in the ground. We want to be close to the financial regulators, who are the ones that ultimately will decide what type of participants they want in their financial systems. We are also close to the tax regulators. They're the ones that are going to tell us how we account for taxes in each country. And FX rules as well. That's very important. That's how we would define how the money flows in and flows out in the country. So we need to be local. We need to be local in order to be able to address all of those points. So our solution of one contract, one API, it actually has a full localization layer of compliance, regulatory, and legal specificities. As I said, we have local people, and we also leverage a very intensive expert network in each country. We also, the manner that we partner locally, it's also with the goal to achieve that specific payment method, that specific tool that will help us even like monitoring the transactions that we are handling in that country. So this is a full 360 compliance, legal, and regulatory a partnership with not only local partners, experts, but also with our merchants, right? We have very demanding merchants. They don't expect us to say, okay, I can process in this country and that's it. We need to explain them why the license we have are enough, why the activity that we have in that country follows local regulations, follow FX rules, follow compliance standards, and why we are not going to be blindsided by a different change in regulatory framework. So this is it's a process that, I worked a lot with John as well, hand to hand, some clients explaining why we are there, but also in the day to day. So when something changes, we are there to say, okay, we are seeing this coming. We are top of it. We are ready to adapt. So yes, as I said, one contract, one API, we can offer local or international settlements with that one contract, but that unfolds this full local compliance layer of it. We have the licenses, permissions, and authorizations that we need in order for our merchants to be able to receive the money that we are collecting on their behalf. We also have very AI-driven fraud and financial crime prevention. We want to make sure that everything going through our rails are legitimate transactions. We also have tax management. We can tell them, okay, this is how taxes apply in this country, especially local to local, cross-border. We can help them to also seek local partners for their own also advice and benefits. We can say how the FX rules happens, how we manage to collect, expatriate their banking partners, FX broker partners, etc. And again, we do this with all those changes and with all the changes in regulations that might come. And yeah, that's what I want to talk to you like in the next slides. It's going through each of those items more specifically. So this is our regulatory infrastructure, which I'm personally very proud of. You can see that there are different types of licensing colors in the map. You're going to have those where we already hold a license, registration, authorization, etc., depending on what is applicable to us, of course. There are other countries that we are in the process of applying it. There are countries that we don't need a license just because the regulatory framework is not yet addressing the activities that we are performing in the country. And among that, and even in every one of them, we can also partner with already licensed partners. And then we gain efficiency after. So we can learn with a specific local partner, and then we say, okay, actually that license interests us. Let's apply to it. Let's have it directly. And then we can move and have a direct license and a direct contact with that regulator. And I think I missed, the green one, which are countries where we have 1, 2 type of license, but we're applying for other ones. And that's just how diverse the regulatory framework are in those countries specifically. It's worth mentioning that we don't only have licenses and registrations in emerging markets, we also hold in developed markets because we need them to be able to settle to our clients. And I'm going to guide you some examples. In Brazil, for example, we are sub-acquirer. We are what we call an EFX. We are also a participant in PIX, so we are within the infrastructure of the PIX, the instant payment system. We are now also in the process of application about a full payment institution license and also a payment initiator license. And the reason why we have so many different figures is because Brazil is very dense regulatory-wise, and they have a specific regulation for each type of activity you're doing within the payment ecosystem. Another example is Nigeria. I know you heard it. Jaco mentioned, Moses mentioned, we are a payment solution service provider there. So we are able to collect funds there, connect to local acquirers, and then remit those funds abroad through licensed banks and FX brokers. We also have, for example, the UK. After Brexit, before Brexit, we were able to serve our UK merchants through our European license. Because of Brexit, we applied to a temporary regime, and now we are in the process of getting a license as a payment institution directly with the FCA. And just a last example that is a bit different from the previous ones, for example, is the one in Philippines. In Philippines, we are registered as an operator in the payment system. It's very different from the other ones, but it's so full of nuances as well. So it's very interesting to see how each country address their payment ecosystem differently, and to be able also to learn and to navigate that. That personally is what makes my job a lot of fun. And this, I just want to show to you how we have been more and more efficient in how we apply to licenses. So the more we are going through that experience in different countries, we're developing a toolbox that serves us to keep applying in new countries, to leverage our knowledge, to understand also how to explain to local regulators what we do. There are countries that they might have a very strong local payment ecosystems, but they're not maybe so familiar with a cross-border payment scenario. So we want to be sure that we are transparent. We reach out to the authorities. We say, that's what we do. And sometimes the regulation might be clear on what we need to apply. Sometimes it's less clear. So we need to make sure that we also have the dialogue so we can apply and be able to move fast. Because if we are able to go there and talk to the regulator, like, for example, we did that in Kenya, that's what we do. What do you think is applicable license to us? We did that in Indonesia as well. And they say, look, for what I'm here, ABC, it's the one that fits the most to you. So this is how we have learned to gain time and leverage our expertise and be faster every time we go to new markets. And again, this is not only by entering the market. We need to keep that in every single day throughout our presence in that market. It's beyond entrance. Those markets, any market actually, they're prone to change. And even more so when we're talking about 40 emerging markets, which are keeping developing, evolving their regulations. So again, I mean, just here, I just want to make the point that we partner with local experts. We have our people on the ground, and we partner with local regulators, such as the example I just told you. Tax and effects rules, that's another very interesting element of what we bring to the table, because again, there's no unified way to approach taxes such as in the European Union. So this means to go to each country and understand how that applies. And for example, one of the questions we make ourselves is, can dLocal collect and pay taxes on behalf of our customers? Can we not? Or actually the law doesn't address that. And we have very tangible examples. Let's say in Argentina, for offshore merchants, we have to, and we do, collect and pay taxes on their behalf. But there are countries such as Egypt and Nigeria that we are not allowed to do so. And both regulations has this own reason. In Argentina, they're saying, you're the last mile in the country, so you should be doing this, so we ensure that taxes are being collected. When we think about the logic in Egypt and Kenya, sorry, I think I said Nigeria is Kenya, the logic is, a merchant could have more than one payment provider. So actually, I need to go to the source of information, which is the merchant. So again, it's different ways to approach sometimes the same needs, which is collect taxes, but they address with their own uniqueness. And we just need to make sure that we are there, we understand, and we can act when possible on behalf of our clients if they need to. I think what we're also very proud is the way we mastered our local-to-local tax payment. We collect, like, normally we are withholding agents in the local-to-local flow, and we actively also talk to tax authorities to say, look, this is what we do. So this tax we are collecting actually should be a credit of our merchants. So we try to create value, even sometimes when the merchant's not asking, because we understand that that's the chain, that's what a payment processor needs to do in that flow. And we believe in being transparent and letting the authorities know what we do in that, and what is our revenue, what is the merchant's revenues, and therefore their own credit. And another layer is compliance, right? We handle data in a very unique way. Our systems are very technology and AI driven. We monitor the transactions that go through our systems, and we cross that data among countries, within a segment specifically, so within merchants within a segment, and that allows us to make sure that everything going through our rails are legitimate transactions. There's like a very good example with one of our providers, because we make sure we use the best available systems that they are there, that when we turned them on, we were able to see a specific flow of a user that she was doing cash in Mexico, cash out in Brazil, and that was continuous, and that of course raised some flags from our compliance and transaction monitoring team. I don't think other payment company would be able to detect that in the way we did, because that user was using different ID numbers, was using different personal data. So how could we actually identify that it was the same user? That's part of our AI trained model that says, okay, I can sign as Gabriela Vieira, and the other one I can put Gabi V, and I can have a passport or a national ID, but that's the same user. So I need to make sure I can address the behavior of those users in our systems. Why merchants choose us? We believe we have an unmatched solution because it goes further, the part of our core solution is product, the way we interact with our merchants, but we do that with a layer of compliance, regulatory and legal compliance. So for us, this means that we have a very strong solution, and we do that in one of the most difficult countries they are. And yes, they can rely on us to navigate through those changes, as I said, to explain them some uniqueness of the markets and how regulators are also thinking. They know that we interact with regulators. We try to seek what is their mindset. And again, that's also why we are ready to tackle new markets and new realities. We also share the mission of those countries. We share the mission that we need to empower consumers and sellers in the emerging market. We need to empower the emerging market itself. And we believe in financial inclusion. We believe in sustainability. We believe in all of those things that the local authorities are trying to address. So this is core to our product as well. And thank you for listening to me. I want to hand on to Fede, who will talk about product.